City.
Turn up.
Choice FM. The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Happy Monday, everyone. It is Monday, May 13th, the year of our Lord 2024. This is James Gailliard. Welcome for another edition of the James Gailliard Show right here on Choice FM. 92.1 FM. Lock that in on your dial so that we can have a conversation. This is the show that we talk about the things that matter, the things that advance our lives, the things that we might debate about. But the reality of it is the two things that we're often told not to talk about are the two issues, the two subjects that are the single most important subjects in our lives, politics and religion. And so religion is going to make sure I get somewhere better one day, and politics is going to make sure I get around Earth a little bit easier. And so on this show, I talk a little bit about politics, a little bit about culture, news, sports, religion. If you want to have a conversation with me, I'll take a quick call. But if not, I have a whole lot of content. If you're in the 919, shouting out all my Raleigh and Durham folk, 872-9210. And if you're in the 252, Rocky Mount, Wilson, Roanoke Rapids, Scotland Neck, all of those areas, 937-7400. So if you've been with me before, you know that I start every show with two segments. And the first segment I always start with is They Said What? And They Said What is our segment about what did your man or woman of God preach about yesterday? As you know, I pastor the wonderful folk in Rocky Mount and around our state and around our nation at Word Tabernacle Church. Been here now 19 years as senior pastor. Yesterday, I preached on Mother's Day about burdens. I want to recap that for you. I don't know who this is for, but either you can shed a burden, which means you know it's not meant for you to carry, or you can share a burden, meaning you won't carry it alone, or you can shoulder a burden, which means it's your cross. It's something you're going to have to deal with. Please receive this word. Do not shoulder what was meant for you to shed. Do not shoulder what was meant for you to shed. And so I want you to think about your life and what God has you at, where he has you at this place in your life, and just want to encourage you to shed some burdens. Let some stuff go. Don't carry things that are meant for other people. But also be mindful that just because you're carrying something does not mean God's hand is off you. It means he's going to use that burden that you're shouldering to advance you, to enlarge your faith, to promote what he's doing in your life. And so that's what I preached about, in essence, on Mother's Day. And since we're talking about Mother's Day, the second segment that I always do is what happened when we were together last, since we were together last. I want to talk about two things. First of all, I just want to talk about mothers. I want to take a moment and talk about mothers. Yesterday was Mother's Day. I think I would be remiss if I did not just take a moment and just have us reflect on our mothers. I want to encourage you to do that. It was a tough day for me, in all honesty. I really struggled more than I was expecting. I never know, right? I don't know if you've ever lost someone really close to you. None of us are really, tuned in enough to our emotions to know when things are going to trigger for us and when the weight gets particularly heavy. For me, yesterday it was just one of those heavier days. I found myself hanging out for a little while at the cemetery, about an hour and a half or so. Just kind of sat there and reflected upon my mother's life, and I even took a chair out there with me and just kind of reflected and then just tried to get a little stress off me and wound up washing my motorcycle, just as a stress reliever. And want to encourage that, by the way. What are you doing to relieve your stress? I mean, we need to have healthy outlets. This is a question I love to ask people. What are you currently doing to decrease the amount of stress that your life is under, that your body is under, that your mind is under? Make sure you've got a healthy, notice what I said, a healthy outlet. But I'm grateful to God for my mother. I'm sure many people who are watching the show, and I'll jump online in a little bit and see who's out there. If you're just tuning in, This is James Gailliard, and you are listening and or watching the James Gailliard Show right here on 92.1 FM, Choice FM, the People Station. And this is really your show. This is the show where I really want to talk about the things that will advance your life and that will promote your life. But I'm talking about Mother's Day since Mother's Day was yesterday. I was blessed with an exceptional woman who raised me, Ruth Mae Gailliard. She was no one did it like her. She was rare, and can't begin to express in words how much I miss her voice, her advice, her encouragement, her guidance, just her ability to live as sacrificially as she did. I am really the real recipient, and I'm a byproduct of a person who really sacrificed so that I could have the life that I have, and I'm grateful. And so really reflected heavily on my mom. All the hats at church on Sunday had me really thinking heavily about her. She's going to wear a hat to church. She was old school. She didn't wear pants to church, and she was going to wear a hat most times. And so just want to encourage you to think about mom, reflect upon mom. If you still have your mother, listen to me. Take good care of her. And I'm not talking about just one day a week. I'm grateful, one day a year rather. I'm grateful that for the last 7 or so, 8 years of my mother's life, I was able to take really, really, really great care of her. And I'm grateful to God that he gave me that opportunity and that space and time with her. So since we were together last, we celebrated Mother's Day, but since we were together, and so let me shout out all the mothers out there. Let me shout y'all out. Come on, shout your mama out. Shout your mama out. But since we were together last, I've attended some graduations. I want to talk a little bit about these graduations. I've been watching people that are commencement speakers at these various universities. As many of you may know, I am a trustee at Elizabeth City State University, so I had the opportunity to be present for our graduation, and I've been paying attention. I watched on Saturday the North Carolina A&T graduation. Shout out to all the Aggies out there, all the Vikings out there, what other, particularly HBCUs, but all the schools, shouting you all out. And so Evan graduated from North Carolina A&T, and so I watched it on YouTube, and just watched all of the young people. It had my eyes sweating, y'all, watching these young people, 21, 22 years old, graduating, about to start their lives. It was just phenomenal. But I've been reading up now on graduation speakers. Now, look, real talk, Tamron Hall was the graduation speaker at A&T on Saturday. Look, just me, I'm not hating or anything. I'm just personally not a Tamron Hall fan. And I don't think she did a very good job as the graduation speaker. It just wasn't meaty enough for me, and I got to thinking. I've been watching and who's doing what, who's saying what at these graduations. So I saw where Jerry Seinfeld was Duke's graduation speaker, and so there was a lot of discussion. These protests are going on. This whole pro-Israel versus pro-Palestine protests on these college campuses, and this raises so many issues for me. I don't want to chase a rabbit with this, but it raises the issue of at what point, freedom, First Amendment, freedom of speech, I don't feel like that gives you the right to shut down a graduation. I don't feel like that gives you, what do y'all say? I mean, you can protest, you can display how you feel, but when you start shutting stuff down, I don't know. These kids have worked hard to graduate. They want to celebrate. They want to have their moment. We have got to get back to engaging in real civil discourse. And so the ability, you got students at the same university, some are pro-Palestine, some are pro-Israel, and yet oftentimes there's a struggle with their ability to talk on the other side of the aisle to the point where we shut things down for everybody. And so I saw where there was a group of people at Duke that just had a silent protest, and they walked out when Jerry Seinfeld, because he's obviously pro-Israel, and then there was another group chanting Jerry, like in support of him. And I just hate the fact that the graduation winds up being about the commencement speaker and not about these students that worked hard to earn their degrees. And so I'm noticing that. But then I noticed, like, for those of you who you may or may not know this, there's a guy on CNN. I think he comes on Saturdays. I usually listen to him on POTUS on Sirius XM radio, a guy named Michael Smerconish. I really like Michael Smerconish's show because he's moderate. I mean, he does what I attempt to do. I'm a little left-leaning on some things, but I'm kind of right-leaning on some things too. But he will call you out. It doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, he's just calling you out. Well, he was scheduled to be the keynote commencement speaker for Dickinson College. And his show was out of Philadelphia, and so he's there in Pennsylvania, Dickinson College. And they disinvited him because of something that he wrote like 20 years ago. And I just thought it was just unfortunate because do we believe in the First Amendment or not? Or do we only believe in the First Amendment when it's somebody expressing something that we agree with? But then when they express something we disagree with, all of a sudden we don't want to hear them speak as if they don't have something positive to say in other regards. I thought it was really disencouraging. It discouraged me just to see Michael Smerconish disinvited from Dickinson College. And then, guess who Morehouse has as a commencement speaker? The president. President Joe Biden is going to be commencement speaker at Morehouse. The staff is going to be voting, the faculty, I should say. The faculty is going to be voting on whether or not to award him an honorary doctorate degree from Morehouse. And so there's a lot of debate on campus about this. I'm nervous about President Biden being at Morehouse. When I was a student there, on more than one occasion, Ronald Reagan was president then. On more than one occasion, President Reagan visited us at Morehouse, and they tend to do that. It's probably the finest university for African-American males in the world. And so they come by and kind of, talk with us and make their appearances, particularly if it's an election year. And so President Biden is going to be the commencement speaker at Morehouse. But what say you about this issue? So here's where my question for you is. First of all, at what point do you believe that your First Amendment right to free speech, do you believe that gives you the right to boycott public events? Do you believe that your voice should be so widely accepted and heard that if it means I shut down a graduation, then oh well, so be it? So at what point do you feel like it's enough? But here's my second question to you. If you could choose anyone to speak to a group of graduating college class, who do you think would be a great commencement speaker? Would it be Barack Obama? Would it be who would be a great commencement speaker? I'm going to have to pull y'all up so I can see what kind of things you're saying. So I have a twofold question. First, who would be your commencement speaker is my first question. But then my second question is, what would you say to them? What would you say to them? I've jotted some things down that if I were asked to speak at a college commencement, it's like, what would I say to these students, right? So this is some of the things I jotted down. I would tell them, first of all, to develop what I call success skills. To develop success skills. I would encourage them because I think that there are certain skills that are transferable regardless of what your industry is. Now if I got to a college student, if I got to a student before they graduated, I would tell them to choose their major very carefully. Like literally major in something where you can get a job and actually make money. That's a whole nother conversation. But I would tell them to develop success skills. I think oftentimes, and I've seen this in situations, people have the degree, but they don't know how to do anything. They have the degree, but you're looking at them and you're literally scratching your head like, you have a degree? So I think the question becomes, what then are success skills? I jotted down a couple. So if you're tuning in, this is James Gailliard. You're listening, watching the James Gailliard Show. I'm just kind of getting warmed up today before I get into some heavy conversation around education. But talking about commencements and college graduations and what's going on these campuses and the protests and First Amendment rights. And what would you say to a graduating class if you had the ability to speak to them? Or who would you want speaking to them? And so I would tell them to develop some success skills, because I think you need to know how to do something. I oftentimes told my children when they were growing up, when somebody writes you, and these days we don't write personal checks as much as we used to, but when you're writing a personal check to someone, there's a little line on the left side of the check as you look at it that says "for" with a line, meaning you're writing on that line what you're paying for. Why did you just give a person your check? That's how you have to view your paycheck. You have to view your paycheck from the lens of it has somebody's signature on it. What did they pay for? What product did I deliver? What service did I deliver? It's all about deliverables, right? And so what are you able to do? What success skills can you offer? So let me say a couple more things about that. I would tell them to be a lifelong learner. I would tell them, you think about AI, artificial intelligence, right? Intelligence, and how quickly it's evolving, right? So really becoming lifelong learners, paying attention. The advent of social media to the extent that it is now just did not exist like this 20 years ago, and look at how rapidly moving things are. So really understanding that you have to commit yourself even after graduation to becoming a lifelong learner. You've got to be a student of society and a student of what's next. It's kind of like, the hockey game is on tonight. Hopefully Carolina, the Hurricanes won't get eliminated tonight. So, pushing for the Hurricanes. But, Wayne Gretzky, probably the greatest. I don't keep up a whole lot with hockey, but one of the greatest players, certainly to have ever played the game. When asked about his success, he always said, I skated to where the puck was going, where the puck was going. Not where it was, but where it was going. So like having the ability to know where things are headed, I would tell them. The other thing that I would tell them is to learn how to solve problems. Learn how to solve problems. Then I would tell them to manage your money well. That it doesn't matter if you make $100,000 a year if you spend $101,000. And you could be very happy, making $40,000 a year if you only spend $30,000. So really helping manage your money well, because that goes so far in terms of your happiness of your life. It's not just enjoying what you do, which I hope everyone does, but doing it in such a way that you're not broke, a day after you get paid. So I would tell them to manage your money well. I would tell them to work on their communication skills. I would tell them to have the ability to know how to articulate their positions well. And I'm going to check and see what some of you are talking about. I would tell them to be able to articulate, because people are going to judge you based upon how you communicate, right? How you express yourself. And I think oftentimes when, you bump into people, man, and they don't have good subject-verb agreement, or they don't have a good command of the English language, or they use profanity a lot, which is always evidence of a mind that is not well prepared, not well read, that lacks words. I think those things matter. And so how do you communicate? This is why you have to be careful about text messaging. All my young people out here, all these abbreviations and stuff, and all these little letter codes you're putting in, you can't do that on a resume. You've got to be able to spell the word out. You have to be able to have it, all the information accurate together. So I would tell them to make sure they worked on their communication skills. I would also tell that we're talking about what would you tell a college graduate? If you were the commencement speaker, what would you tell them? I would also tell them their appearance is important. You don't, and I'm not, if you want to wear, however you want to wear your hair is how you want to wear your hair, but just let it be nice, right? Just let it look like it's been done. And so I would tell them your appearances matter, that you don't need to display all your body parts when you get dressed. And there's a way to still look nice and still look presentable, but yet fashionable. And also I would tell them to watch out for their appearance. And then I would tell them to be a good citizen. I mean, I would tell them just be a good citizen. Participate in society. Give back. Become a mentor. Get mentored. Help other people. Be responsible. Pick up after yourself. Just be a good citizen. Be a good person. It would be a whole lot more, but those are some of the things that I would tell young people. I said Master P would be a great speaker. Who else? Who else is out there? Are you prepared for the future? It was all of that, Pastor. I appreciate that. So that's what I would tell them. I was personally disappointed with Tamara Hall's speech, commencement address at A&T. I felt like it was very shallow. I felt like it was, too many references to appearance and too many references to stilettos and too many stories that just didn't connect, and it was just didn't seem well prepared and well presented as far as I'm concerned. And so, but anyway, shouting out all those other, I want to shout you out. If you just graduated, I want to shout you out. Congratulations to everybody. Before we take our first break, let me just talk real quick about this because I got a heavy second segment. I want to shout out the WNBA. I want to go ahead and be amongst those people that start advocating that North Carolina have a WNBA team. There's 12 teams right now. Atlanta has a team. Chicago has a team. Connecticut has a team. Dallas, Indiana, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New York, Minnesota, Phoenix, Seattle, and Washington. We need a team in North Carolina. And I'm loving this WNBA stuff that's going on. I think it is outstanding. I'm excited for it. I'm here for it. It's kind of mind-boggling to me that they've been flying commercial all this time, and now, they've been able to find some money so they can start flying charter, which I think is great. I don't like the data, y'all. I don't like the data with the NBA versus WNBA. I thought it was a far more extreme division between fans, but it's like 3 times the average NBA game is 18,000 fans. The average WNBA is 6,000. Oh, that's going to change, I know. So this is why I don't like the data. So that's 3 times more the fan base. But the average salary for the WNBA player is around $130,000. And for the average NBA salary is $9 million. Now, you would think if the fan base was 3 times the amount, that the salary would be 3 times the amount. Maybe 4. But I didn't even do the math. But $130,000 compared to $9.5 million? Come on, y'all. I want to say some more about WNBA when we come back. I want to talk about local elections being important because, and when we come back, how about a school board in Virginia has voted to restore the Confederate names of 2 schools. So I want to talk about the importance of local elections. I want to talk about House Bill 823 that's in the General Assembly. This is James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. Put your questions in. We'll be right back after we pay some bills.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM. North Carolina requires ID to vote in 2024. Polls accept your North Carolina driver's license, U.S. passport, and NC voter ID, photo ID from your county's Board of Elections, a college or university ID, or a state, local government, or charter school employee ID. Be ready for election season. For more information, go to safevoternc.org or ncblackalliance.com. Hot out the grease and hot off the grill. Memorial Day celebration, Sunday, May 26th at the Pack House. Get your $25 advance tickets on Eventbrite.com. Search Pack House. Hot out the grease and hot off the grill. Sunday, May 26th at the Pack House.
Pop's Diner, 132 South Church Street, Rocky Mount. Juicy burger, hot, delicious wing, yummy spaghetti, and the first pizza to ever be served downtown Rocky Mount. Hot, delicious pizza and more at Pop's Diner. Pop's Diner for hot dogs. Pop's Diner for lunch. Open daily from 11 till 7 p.m. City workers get the Pop's hookup. Pop's Diner open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Wings, pizza, burgers, spaghetti, salads, and more. Hot, fresh, and fast at Pop's downtown Rocky Mount. Open 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
If we'd only seen you a year ago, your heart condition wouldn't be as serious.
You don't want to be that guy.
Without coverage, your test, medication, and emergency room care will cost you $1 billion and 62 cents.
You don't want to be that lady.
The asthma is really out of hand, and your blood sugar level is super high. Who's your primary care doctor?
Dr. Dre. You don't want to be that guy. It's time to get enrolled and have dependable health care coverage. Do you need help? Wait. You need health insurance. So let's get it. Saturday, May 18th, join UNC Health for their Johnston County Medicaid enrollment health screening. Food boxes for the first 80 people, and get signed up for NC Medicaid. You will have access to regular doctor visits, maternity care, emergency care, dental care, mental health care, prescription drugs, and more at little to no cost to you. If you live in North Carolina and are between 19 and 64 years old, don't leave these services on the table. Come and get signed up. Saturday, May 18th at the Johnston Medical Mall, 514 North Brightleaf Boulevard in Smithfield.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Hey family, welcome back. This is James Gailliard, and you are listening and watching the James Gailliard Show. Let's have a little light conversation today before we jump into the heavy stuff. Appreciate some of the comments that are out there. I really appreciate, where is it? Kevin Jones, man. Appreciate those scholarships too, by the way, Kevin, man. It's great work you do in the community. He says success is a process and a journey. Jay-Z was carrying bags for Big Daddy Kane way before he was the billion-dollar businessman and husband of Beyonce. Look, it's so accurate, man. Sometimes people don't want to pay the price. They don't recognize that this is indeed a process. You know, people look at Word Tabernacle Church and thousands of members, but, you know, I remember when I had the smallest church in Rocky Mount and the smallest church in Eastern North Carolina with 14 members, and you know, but you have to stay faithful in those small areas and those beginnings that God gives you. Angela Pitchford says Denzel Washington. I agree, he would be great. And so we're talking about what you would speak. We were talking about what you would say to at a commencement address if you were speaking to young people. And then we started talking a little bit about the WNBA. I'm loving everything that's going on. I think Caitlin Clark. I mean, Angel Reese, I mean, these ladies have real star power. They've got real appeal, and you know, I'm thrilled about it. I think I'm loving their endorsements, the deals they're getting, all the good things that are happening in people's lives. I mean, Candace Parker winds up now a president of one of the divisions for Adidas after she just announced her retirement from the WNBA, and we're seeing a real spike in ticket sales and all of those good things. And so, I mean, you know, the last basketball, the women's title game for NCAA, it was the most watched basketball game since 2019, men or women. And so I just think it's great. It's good stuff, and I'm certainly shouting out. Witness, yes. What problem can you solve? Yep. I appreciate you acknowledging that. What else is out here so I can go and catch us up? So now this is what I want to talk about, y'all. Let me do a couple things. First of all, what is your thought on qualifications running for statewide office? Senate Bill 867 is now. Let me just say this: it was written, filed by a Democrat. It's probably sitting in the Senate Rules Committee. It's not going to move, but it does raise an interesting conversation, and it kind of is a probably bill that's kind of stabbing at Michelle Marrow a little bit. If you don't know that name, get to know that name. Michelle Morrow is the Republican candidate for superintendent for public instruction. She is running against the Democratic candidate, Maurice Green. And she is a person who is not an educator. She's a person who's never worked in education. She's a person that homeschooled her children. She did have a few children in public school for a little while. But Jay Chaudhry, who is a Democratic senator from Wake County, filed Senate Bill 867, which is Superintendent of Public Instruction Minimum Requirements. The bill would mandate that the state superintendent, and here's the language of it, tell me what you think, must have at least 1 year of experience as a teacher, or a year experience as a state administrator, or a member of a local board of education, or a member of the state board of education in order to qualify to be able to run for that position. And so I'm wondering what you think. Now, understand, let me give you some background. The background is Michelle Morrow, who's a Republican candidate for Secretary of Public Instruction. She never served as a school teacher nor an administrator, never been on a local or state board of education. She did run for Wake County School Board, but she lost. And she's been a grassroots advocate for state education. And so she became a homeschooler because she was disenfranchised with what she saw in public schools. Here's my question. Do you think in order for someone to run a system, they need to be a part of the system? Now, do you think a person needs to be able to, so let's use me as an example. I mean, I've been in the General Assembly, but I've never been on the school board. I've never been in the classroom. I've never been an administrator of a school. Do you think I should be able to run all of the public schools in North Carolina? Do you think a person should be able to do that? Now, mind you, this bill is not going to go anywhere for a lot of reasons because the Constitution is what guides this. And so in order for this to become law, the people would have to vote on it as a constitutional amendment. That's never going to happen. But generally speaking, the person who serves in running that overall public education secretary spot, they're a part of what's called the Council of State. And generally speaking, the Council of State, which is 10 people, and they're like the executive body, if you will. It's the governor, lieutenant governor, et cetera. These are the people that generally under North Carolina statute, they don't have to have any kind of minimum requirements. I think the only exceptions are the ag commissioner, it says has to be a practicing farmer, but then the definition of farmer is really never stated anywhere. And then you've got, because even our current auditor, Democrat Jessica Holmes, is not an accountant. She's a lawyer. She's an attorney, but she's not an accountant. So I was just wondering what you thought about that. I thought it was interesting. I think it's just their way of kind of putting a little dig at Michelle Morrow because she seems to me to be highly unqualified to be in such a premier position. I mean, the way I feel about it is like you don't get to run a church if you've never attended one. You know, if you don't go to church, how do you get to run one? And so, I thought it was important. I'm gonna be talking a lot in the months ahead about that race because I do think whoever is running our next superintendent of public instruction is going to be a really pivotal race for us, and I want us paying careful attention to that. Let me pivot. Local elections. Local elections are, Shanetta said 1 year. Wow. Just 1 year. That's my point exactly. It really, Shanetta, the bill was really written at a dig to her, I think. This is what's called a run-on bill, y'all. Sometimes legislators will file a bill that will never see the light of day, but they accomplish something because they have me talking about it, right? And I have listeners and people watching in Wake County. And so here I am giving, Senator Jay Chaudhry some time of day because he wrote a bill that's not going to go anywhere as a dig to Michelle Morrow. And so the point is you've got a Republican candidate trying to run public schools that knows nothing at all about public education, that has no experience, that has no training, that has no education in it. And this is why I struggle with political parties. one of my struggles with political parties is sometimes you're a Republican and your Republican candidate is not the best person for the position. So be decent enough, big enough to say, hey, I'm a Republican, but we don't have a great candidate this time, and so I just can't put everything behind them. Same thing with Democrats. Same thing with race. Same thing with gender. Like, just because you are black or white or male or female does not mean that you're the best person. And so I just lose respect. I remember when Tim Moore was interviewed about this. Tim Moore, Speaker of the House. I remember when Tim Moore was interviewed about Michelle Marlowe because nobody expected her to win the Republican primary. And he just says, like, look, you know, I'm a Republican and I'm supporting Republicans up and down the ballot. And I'm like, dude, you know she is so bad for public education. And so, speaking of public education, local elections are important, y'all. Listen to this. Shenandoah County, Virginia, has voted, their school board has voted 5-1 to reinstate the names of Stonewall Jackson High and Ashby Lee Elementary. These are Ashby Lee and Stonewall Jackson are Confederate generals. And so the names had been changed back in 2021 to Mountain View High School and Honey Run Elementary School. Well, school board has turned over. And this is why elections at every level are so important, that I can't just be concerned about top of ballot issues and top of ballot candidates, that I've got to run that entire ballot. Hear me and hear me well. There will be added pressure on local school boards. And I want you to notice what's happening here, that you have this entire movement afoot that's already begun in Virginia, where guess what they're saying? I want us to put this together. What they're saying is Confederacy is a part of our history. And because Confederacy, and I have a whole view about the Confederacy, let me tell you, you'll need to listen. I need a whole show for this because, I mean, we all know what the Confederate War, we know what the Confederacy was about. We know what the Civil War was about. So we know it was treasonous. They have their own flag that flies against our flag, the United States flag. And so the fact that we have statues to them and people still wave flags to them, that's a whole nother show. I'm not going to let y'all drag me into that. But hear me and hear me well. Look at the hypocrisy of this. The hypocrisy and the contradiction of this is that there are populations of people now who are saying the Confederacy is a part of our history. We don't want you erasing our history. Hello? Diversity, equity, inclusion, a banning of books. I mean, look at what's going on in Florida, and even to a certain degree, efforts to do it here in North Carolina, where certain books students are not allowed to read, right? Where portions of where slaves textbooks have been rewritten to say slaves were voluntarily relocated. Huh? Not that they were taken into slavery. They voluntarily relocated. They just kind of stood on the shores in Benin or Togo, and they just waited for a ship to come, and they just voluntarily jumped in so they could go to America. Okay. So it's interesting to me that the hypocrisy of this is that here you are erasing the history of African Americans, or trying to, but yet when it's your history of Confederacy, you're going to commandeer control of a school board and then change the names of schools back. And so I want us to be mindful of how important these local elections are. Somebody's saying, let me see what people are saying to me. I want you to be mindful of how important these local elections are, because the reality of it is people who are running city council, county commissioners, school boards, our sheriffs are really, really, really important. And so experience is the best teacher. That's like me being a member of the church and want to go straight to preaching. Yeah, man, indeed. Absolutely not. Appreciate that. You're right. You need to have some experience to be able to run this thing. No, but you can be the president of the United States from prison or with a felony. Yeah, there's that, right? I was just talking about school board elections intentional. Indeed, Latanya, indeed, that we have to really be careful who is running. Can I just encourage somebody? You need to run. When the best people do not run for public office, we wind up being governed by our inferiors. We wind up being governed by people with perhaps that lack the integrity. And that doesn't say, I'm not saying everybody in office lacks integrity. I'm just telling you that there's some good people on the sidelines. And so I thought this was really interesting. And so while we're on the subject of education, we talked about Virginia. We talked about the Senate bill about the minimum requirements to run the public school systems in our state. House Bill 823. House Bill 823 is an act to provide additional funds, you know I'm going to talk about, for the Opportunity Scholarship Program. I'm exhausted, y'all. I'm exhausted. I want you to hear what the increase is like. Now, I was doing some reading. The North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority. Know that agency, NCSEAA, North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority. They're the ones with tasks with managing this program on how students get scholarships, right? So you've got these tier ranking of scholarships. So these are for, and let me just say this, because I know I get a lot of hate messages about this. The reason I struggle with opportunity scholarships is because we deliberately and intentionally and willfully underfund and undercut traditional public education, which is where the majority of educators, the majority of counselors, the majority of nurses, and most importantly, the majority of the students reside. And so I don't like people when they put some kids in front of other kids, when they don't treat all kids as being important. For me, James Gailliard, I want every child to have a great education, period. And I would never deliberately and willfully destroy a system that children were in. And so we are watching a dismantling of public education and money being wrestled away and given to a small subset of other schools and other kids, and we're clapping about it. What foolishness is that? Why would we celebrate that? So this is so crazy to me because, so you have all of these applications for people to have their children in private schools, right? Well, at a certain point, a wait list hit. Now, I want you to understand the tiered system. The tier one that everybody got in were kids that were in the lowest income. Their parents were in the lowest income, okay? Well, then we get some tier two in. Well, now we have all this wait list for tier three families. Now, I want you to hear this. Let me tell you what the category is. These are the people waitlisted that the bill is now going to fund. These are families that a family of four makes $260,000 a year. Their family income is $260,000 a year. We have just funded a program to give families that make $260,000 or more a year government money to pay for the private education of their child that they were already paying for. Let me tell you how bad what this bill does. It provides an increase in funds for these scholarships for the next 15 years. And these are recurring funds. That means they come back year after year. Now, let me show you where this has gone. When I was in the General Assembly, 2019 and 2020, we wound up funding $64 million. Listen to this data. We funded $64 million in opportunity scholarships. Then the number went up by $10 million to $74 million. Let me tell you what this bill does. This bill does, now it moves, let me just take us straight to 2031. 8 years from now. It will move, and it already passed legislation that by 2031 they will provide $540 million, $540 million in opportunity scholarships. Let me tell you what they moved it to: $800 million. $800 million to provide opportunity scholarships to a small subset of kids. And here's my concern. I read an article on school choice from the president of the Fordham Institute. And his article was really interesting. And what he says, I want to know what y'all think about this. I mean, y'all out here with me, right? I got people hanging up on me, I guess, but that's all right. And so he says school choice need not mean an expensive windfall for the rich. An important debate is brewing: how to balance the drive for educational freedom. And let me be very clear, from a public acceptability perspective, school choice is popular. I mean, let's just be honest about it, which is why I really am not anti-school choice. Unlike a lot of Democrats, I'm not anti-school choice. It's exactly the opposite. And you've heard me talk about this, if you strip money from one place, give it to another place, if you're intentional and willful about not creating an environment for a school to thrive, you're not creating an environment because it's not funded. You're not creating an environment because they can't be flexible. They can't be adaptable. They can't be innovative and creative with their curriculum and the way they do things because you have them so hand-tied. If you do that to one school system, I mean, you think about charter schools. You know, charter schools come in on the advent and they have all of this flexibility that traditional public schools don't have. And so they're hamstrung. They're stuck with being flexible. And because of that, the systems wind up underperforming. And then you have another system over here that you're giving flexibility to. You're giving the ability to be creative. You're giving them the ability to be adaptive. You're giving them all of these, you're not putting the same restrictions on them around transportation, right? So you got all of these other factors. This other school then becomes successful. Now listen to me. School over here, you give them all the bells and whistles, they're successful. School over here, you take everything from them, they're not successful. A parent looks at the two schools. Is that choice? Is that choice? Do I really have a choice? No, of course I don't. And so the problem I have with school choice is that it's not. I have no problem with legitimacy of school choice, but we're not giving kids the legitimacy of school choice. And I definitely am, and listen, James Gailliard talking. Nobody listening to this show should be paying for my child to go to private school. I'm sorry. Nobody listening or watching should be responsible for y'all paying for my child's private education. I just don't believe in that. Because even if I don't have a child in public schools, because 80% of everybody in the workforce came from a public school, even though if you personally, because I know what you're thinking, well, I pay my taxes, I'm paying taxes, and those taxes fund the school system, so if I don't have a child in the system, why do I have to fund it? I'm glad you asked me. The reason is because you are a user of the byproduct of the school. And so when you go to the grocery store and the cashier is there, it's an 80% likelihood that they went to a public school. When you drive up in the line to get your order, it's an 80% possibility they went to a public school. When you show up at the emergency room and they're triaging you, it's 80% likelihood they went to a public school. When you get on transit and they driving you around, it's an 80% likelihood they went to public school. That's why you pay for it, because you use it. I use it. It has nothing to do with whether or not I have a child in it. It has to do with whether or not I use the result and the byproduct of the system. And we all do. And so, I'm frustrated with this. I want to hear your thoughts. I'm right up on my last break. This is James Gailliard. You're listening to the James Gailliard Show right here on Choice 92.1 FM. When we come back, I'm going to finish this conversation about public education, the value of local elections, and what say you on what we should be paying the college graduates. I'll be right back.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
AURN News.
The black unemployment rate here in the U.S. decreased to 5.6%, according to the latest jobs report from the Department of Labor, marking a decline after an uptick the previous month. However, significant racial disparities remain, with black Americans continuing to face the highest unemployment rate among all racial groups. The economy added 175,000 non-farm jobs in April, which is the lowest monthly gain since October 2022, when only 165 jobs were added. The national unemployment rate rose slightly to 3.9%, remaining within the range of 3.7 to 3.9% seen since August last year. Now, in comparison to the 5.6% unemployment rate for black Americans, the rates for other racial groups were lower, 2.8% for Asians, 3.5% for whites, and 4.8% for Hispanics. For AURN News, I'm Jamie Jackson.
Hot out the grease and hot off the grill. Memorial Day celebration at the Pack House. Yeah, boy. On stage, Michi and Black Diamond. Sunday, May 26th. Les Long in Choice FM's Southern Soul Sunday with DJ Mikey D live on the air. The Grill Masters and Fry Masters are on site all day. Doors open at 3, and all veterans and active duty military qualify for drawings all day. We're getting it hot out the grease and hot off the grill. Sunday, May 26th at the Pack House. Michi. Black Diamond. The Pack House, 100 William Perry Road, Lewisburg, with Choice FM. Hot out the grease and hot off the grill. Don't miss the show, party, and holiday cookout Sunday, May 26th at the Pack House, 100 William Perry Road, Lewisburg.
Pop's Diner, 132 South Church Street, Rocky Mount. Juicy burger, hot, delicious wing, yummy spaghetti, and the first pizza to ever be served downtown Rocky Mount. Hot, delicious pizza and more at Pop's Diner. Pop's Diner for hot dogs. Pop's Diner for lunch. Open daily from 11 till 7 p.m. City workers get the Pop's hookup. Pop's Diner, open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Wings, pizza, burgers, spaghetti, salads, and more. Hot, fresh, and fast at Pop's downtown Rocky Mount. Open 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
Oh, this North Carolina Education Lottery Winners Club espresso is strong.
Pace yourself. New winners tend to overdo it on the coffee. And with new scratch-offs out, well...
Hey guys, I'm a new winner. My name's Steve. What's your name? I really love this coffee. Wow, this place is great. Glad I grabbed a new scratch-off. Okay, nice to meet you. Gonna get a massage. Ooh, I think I need to relax.
Told you.
This month's tickets pack $135 million in total prizes. The Winners Club awaits. Must be 18 to play. Approximate overall odds of winning range from 1 in 3.41 to 4.25. Problem gambling helpline 877-718-5543.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Family, I'm back. We're rounding third base on today's show. I appreciate all of you and your comments and everything that you've shared. This is the James Gailliard Show. I'm James Gailliard. Today, we talked a little bit about the WNBA. Today, we talked a little bit about the importance of local elections. I highlighted, and I want to just bring this back to our attention, the local school board that moved to rename the schools as part of a resolution condemning racial. So the name was changed initially like in the George Floyd era, right? And so there was a resolution that condemned racism. And the resolution in that school board condemned racism, and it affirmed that the district, I want you to hear this, this is Shenandoah Valley school system in Virginia. The resolution affirmed that the district was committed to an inclusive school environment. That was what their document said. So here's where my question lies. If your resolution said you condemn racism, and the resolution said you were committed to an inclusive school environment, is now this new board saying because remember, that was an old school board. Now the board is totally turned over. Is the board now saying we are not committed to an inclusive school environment and we do not condemn racism? I'm just wondering, is that what it's saying? And y'all, I want to encourage us as we start wrapping up today. I want to encourage us. We have to organize. When I say we, I mean we can't sit on the sidelines. The reason this came about in Shenandoah Valley school system because of the Coalition for Better Schools. So the Coalition for Better Schools literally is just that. It's a coalition. They started appealing, they started advocating, they started lobbying, pressuring the school board. And let me tell you something. Things like this don't happen by accident. Before they started the coalition form, let me tell you how these coalitions work. The first thing the coalition did, they got together, right, and said, listen, we need to change this thing back. In order to change it back, we need at least 4 votes. In their situation, I think it's 4. We need at least 4 votes. That means we need 4 people on the school board that'll do this for us. So the way these coalitions work is that let's make sure we run our candidates. So they identify people that if I get elected, I'm gonna do this for you. So they work behind the scenes. We have to figure out what is the real agenda for rural Eastern North Carolina. What is the real agenda for the African American community? And I don't mean that in an exclusive way, but what I mean it in a way that, generally speaking, any policy positions that are beneficial to the black community tend to be beneficial to the white community. So when I say what is the policy positions for the black community, I'm not excluding whites. I'm not excluding Hispanics. What I'm saying is that how do we come up with an inclusive policy agenda? How do we form a coalition around it? And then how are we intentional and deliberate about putting the people in public office that are going to get across the finish line, the things that we need to get across the finish line? And so I want to encourage you, show up at your school board meetings, watch them, show up, be respectful, but speak. Show up at city council, show up at the county commissioner meetings. These local elections are so close to us. And I mean, the whole ballot matters, but these local elections really, really matter. And so they form a coalition, they wind up getting their people in elected position, and sure enough, they're overturning some of these previous decisions. And then right here in North Carolina, there's this massive move to fund on a recurring basis the private education of very wealthy families. I know I take a risk with this show because I call it straight. And sometimes, hopefully you can disagree with me without disliking me. But this is just how I feel. A person making $40,000 a year, their taxpayer dollars should not be going to pay for the private education of a person that makes $400,000 a year. That's all I'm saying. I don't agree with that. I think that is not fair. I think there's something fundamentally dishonest about that. And that is exactly what the General Assembly is doing now. And they're going to, this is going to be going on in perpetuity. Once they get to that 800,000 I mentioned to you, so they're moving from 540. The year before is moving from 540 to 775, and then from there to 800. And this is once it gets to 800 million, it locks in at 800 million on a recurring basis every year. Nobody even has to advocate for it after that. And so I'm very concerned about the state of traditional public education. And that's why I keep talking about it. But I also keep talking about it because it's in the news. So in the news, we had that HB 823. In the news, we had the local school board that reinstated some of the Confederate names of 2 of their schools. In the news, we had Senate Bill 867, Superintendent of Public Instruction and the minimum requirements. And I just want to keep all of that in front of you. I want to shout out in closing Chancellor Martin on his retirement from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical University, the largest HBCU in the country, right here in North Carolina. Chancellor Martin is quiet, kind of to himself. He's kind of unassuming. If you have a conversation with him, you kind of see him in public, you're not crazy impressed. But let me tell you, his body of work at North Carolina A&T has been outstanding. And so on your retirement and becoming Chancellor Emeritus, Chancellor Martin, I shout you out. I celebrate you. I want us to be paying careful attention to who the next chancellor of North Carolina A&T is going to be. I'm predicting it's going to be a highly political process, and I'm going to give you all a front row seat as we work through that. So, hey, this is James Gailliard. You are listening and watching the James Gailliard Show today. I'm out of clock, but I'm not out of content. I'm out of time, but I'm not out of talk. I'll see you next Monday right at 5 o'clock right here on Choice 92.1 FM.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
This is
WRSV, Elm City.
Turn Up.
Choice FM.